All righty. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on YouTube. I just wanted to take a quick second to say a very special, you're the 10th guest, Charlie. And I kind of timed that on
Oh,
purpose
wow.
because I wanted to get to 10 and have one of my faves on. So everybody, welcome
Oh,
to At
good.
Home with Mark. And we got Mr. Charlie Hunter here.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for making time. I know you're a busy dude and you
Oh,
got a lot going on. So
it is
appreciate
my distinct pleasure to be here.
it. Right on. Well, let me first and foremost. So I wanted to ask you how things are going, like COVID wise, because obviously you were busy out there, kind of pushing it and doing it, and then this all shut down. So, like, what have you been
Yeah.
doing since?
Well, it was definitely an adjustment, because I mean, I just drive a van basically in circles, and I have done so for 30 years. And either that or being on airplanes in Europe or, Asia or South America, and then driving a van or whatever it may be. And, I've never had that much time off ever before. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, during the recession, I had a lot of time off. There was just a lot of time in between gigs because there just weren't any gigs, but this was like, wow, okay, now I don't have a gig for 5 months. And then it's like, oh, you don't have a tour. There's no tours anymore. Okay. And basically I never had time to learn how to record myself or do any of the things that kind of normal people in our industry kind of all take for granted they know how to do, because was spending all my time driving,
Mm-hmm.
or tour managing or whatever it is, and you know so I learned to do that. My friends at Universal Audio hooked me up with a really good deal on an Apollo, and I got that, and I learned Luna, and I learned all this stuff, and it's just been, I mean, other than the fact that we're living in a pandemic with a totally wannabe nuts authoritarian president and his crazy goons and all of the other things, uh, uh, you know, it's been for me on a macro level, it's not a fantastic universe at the moment, but on a micro level, for me, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is a really nice town, and it's really affordable. And so I've been able to really learn a lot of stuff, and I've been recording a ton and doing all these different projects with people that I otherwise would never have been able to do. So that's at least my little silver lining.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think of Luna? What's funny is I've been thinking about checking it out because I'm a Pro Tools guy and I've been doing that forever. But Luna looks
Yeah.
amazing. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, all I know is that it's basically it's the one I learned on. Other than having been in a million studios since Pro Tools was on the scenes, I mean, I did one of probably the earliest Pro Tools sessions at one point back in the at the 90s at some point, late 90s maybe. Um, so I've been around Pro Tools for a really long time, and I know the interface, blah blah blah, but I've never had to be an engineer. I've never had to record myself on it. I've never been that together. But this Luna thing is really, apparently some of the people from Avid, I think is the company that does Pro Tools, they
Mm-hmm.
went over to Universal Audio, and I think that they kind of, maybe Luna, some people are saying Luna is kind of the Pro Tools killer in a lot of ways. And as friends of mine have switched from Pro Tools to Luna because
Oh,
of
okay.
that. Like Carter McLean's used Pro Tools forever, and he got Luna, and he's just like, okay, that's it. This works great. And I think it also has a lot to do with the integration with the hardware as well. And it's just, man, it's just been a blast, and they've been super helpful. You know, trying to let me know how to not do shit.
Are you using any other UA stuff like the aux? Like, have you messed with that aux amp top aux at all?
Well, it's funny you say that. That's a really good friend of mine who made that, James Santiago. We go back 25 years in the Bay Area. And his wife Sheila's also a friend as well. Great horn player, plays with Colin Hay and Dweezil Zappa And so James invented that. And, I don't play with an overdriven amp. I mean, I just play with my amp on 3, basically. So for me, the aux box is kind of maybe a little bit of a waste of its talents,
Right.
So, but he brought one to a gig and I tried it, and it's pretty impressive, But I don't know. Do you use one of those?
You know what's interesting, man, is I just and I'm gonna say this with the caveat of I love Strymon stuff. Everything Strymon does, I feel like they can do no wrong, and I feel the same way about like the Wood Brothers. Every album they put
Yeah,
out, it's
yeah,
just like it's the best. But I just got
yeah.
the
They're
the the Strymon Iridium because I was like, maybe I can do this for some cleaner tones in the studio if I'm doing YouTube demos with pedals and stuff. Maybe it'll work better. And it didn't take pedals that well. So like
ah
any overdrive pedal I was using, it was really fizzy in the high end, and it was just not pleasing. And
ah
not granted, like I'm playing through a nice amp, so when I'm hearing my amp compared to the Iridium, it's way different than a 2 Rock. You know what I mean? So,
right, right,
but it does a thing for sure. But the aux seems like it's got that vibe and that magic because you can use your amp with it. So you get your amp tone.
right,
So
right,
it's
right.
brilliant.
Yeah, I mean it's great, and I'll probably hit James up in another year or something when I figure out. I'm always so late to the game on this stuff. I'm
Right.
usually 2 or 3 years behind the curve.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll do some recording stuff I mean, I've been doing a lot of stuff with regular old Spanish, electric guitar, and I have a Car Telstar amp which goes all the way down to like, 1/4 of a watt. And if I need to get that distorted sound, I can get it and it doesn't bother anybody, so.
Yeah. Because you're kind of a minimalist, right? As far as like pedals and gear, like, because how much does gear inspire you? Like, is there gear that really inspires you to like want to write or pursue something musically?
Um, Not really. Yeah, I think I'm too plain Jane for that kind of stuff. I just don't think my brain works that way. You know what I mean? I'm always coming, I think, more from a rhythmic standpoint. So sonically, like if I hear a drummer play something, then I'll get excited about it. I mean, I pretty much had the same I mean, I think I'm making all these changes sonically, but I always hear it and I'm just like, yeah, it sounds the same. It's just like you sound the same, same as you did 30 years ago. It's better. I mean, I definitely play a lot better, and my time and my feel are a lot better from practicing all the time and playing with so many great musicians over 30 years. But generally, the sound I get out of an instrument, it's kind of always the same thing, whether I like it or not. You know what I mean? So, but I really like these car amplifiers. And I think I've had a Rambler for 10 years, and it's fallen out of the back of the van and fallen down a flight of stairs, and it just plugs in and it works every time.
Yeah.
And then the bass side, just whatever's lightest and easiest to carry up a flight of stairs.
Yeah.
Really, but then, sometimes I'll hear something I'm like, ooh, this sounds really good. But generally it's just getting it in the ballpark, and then hopefully rhythmically it can work. And also I think it comes from a lot of years of being really in the beginning, like being upset and disappointed because I'd be out on the road and I'd have to have backline gear all the time, and it would be not to my liking, and it would, I'd feel like it was the end of the world. And now I've just kind of tried to develop a thing where if it's a funky situation, it's okay because rhythmically you're going to be okay. And that's, it's not going to bother me so much. And then if it's an amazing situation, great, wonderful. But either way, it's not gonna make or break the gig. I mean, for instance, a couple years ago, we were in Manchester, England, Carter McLean and I, and the bass amp was broken at the gig. It just broke. It was no fault of theirs. Band on the Wall, they're great people. And the guitar amp was a Fender Twin, which is so loud for me. I mean, they're great, but they're so loud, and so we basically found a way to plug direct into the house for the bass and have a monitor on stage that worked. And then we put a door with a bunch of like a packing crate, packing towels in front of the Fender Twin and then put a mic on it, so it wasn't. You could turn it up to a regular volume and it wasn't blowing everyone. And it was great. It sounded great and it felt great. So I was like, okay, fine, this works. You know,
That's awesome.
My needs are, I mean, I've gotten it to the point where hopefully my needs, as long as it works, it's okay. The problem is if you have like a really distorted bass amp or a really distorted guitar amp, then that gets problematic for me because it's hard to get the rhythm to really pop with that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Because it's when anytime I've seen you live, and I saw you, speaking of gear, I saw you. I was living in Boston in like 2008, 2009, and you played at the YMCA in the middle of the damn winter. It was so cold, and my drummer and I went to see you, and you had a wah pedal, and you're like, I just pulled this out of the closet the other day, so sorry if I overuse it. And I was like, oh, I've never seen Charlie play with the wah pedal before. And I have that show. Somebody put it up on one of the streaming sites. Some tapers were there, and I still have it, and I still go back and listen to it. But it's such a good show. If I can pull it up, I'll send it to you, man, because you guys killed it. That was like Chimp Gut era, I believe.
Okay, was that with Eric Deutsch and Tony Mason, I think, right?
Yeah, it was
that was a fun band. That was a fun band. Yeah.
It was a great night, man. I was so cold, but we were so happy to be there because like there wasn't that much music going on at that time for some reason in Boston. And I was like, Charlie Hunter's playing here. Let's go. We gotta go, man. So
cool.
And it was at a YMCA nonetheless, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It was great. It sounded great. But
thanks.
What I wanted to ask you about, so like my wife and I constantly walk around the house randomly singing Special Shirt. It's just a Mystico's like one of my
which one is that? I can't remember it. That one. Yeah.
We have this affinity. I don't know what it is between my wife and I, but like that song is always on the tip of our tongue. And I was just curious about that record itself, because that whole record, Mystico, do you remember recording some of these records? Like, is it gray, or is it like, do you have memories of like the process?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. That record, I think, was with Simon Lott and Eric Deutsch. And I think we recorded that in Brooklyn at Bedford Studios. And Andy Tomasi is the engineer, and his whole thing was tape. So I think that may have been recorded to tape. I'm not sure. But I do remember that the amplifier was Buddy Guy's old Tweed Bassman.
What?
Yeah, and that was, and it was in a room that you had to walk through. You had to walk from the control room through to the studio, and it was in a in between room that was soundproof, this amp. And anytime someone would walk through, it was so horribly loud. I would wait for them to walk through, and I'd just go. It was terrible, and one of many small sins that will probably end up costing something in the afterworld, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all. I don't remember too much more, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, because you have so many records out now, it's like it's gotta all blur together. And because I think so, I'm 41. I was I think my first exposure to you was my roommate in college. I think he had Naughty Dread and Duo at the time.
That was in Boston?
No, this is when I was in so I have 2 undergrad degrees, but like one from Boston, one from Berkeley, and one from this little small school in Maryland called Salisbury University. Which I think
cool.
I think you might have played there once. Soul Live did a gig there. I don't know if you were on that too. I just remember. But anyway, my intro to you were basically those 2 albums. And the thing that is totally inspiring to me, kind of looking up to you as an artist, is how fearless you are and how you reinvent yourself every record. And I've tried to live my life that way in terms of like musically, because I appreciate that about you the most. I think it's beyond beyond all the artistry and the musicality that you have. it's like the fearlessness of like, I'm doing what I want to do, man. And did you take a lot of flack from that early on from any labels or anything, or were you just like, I'm going by my
No,
own drummer?
yeah, I chose to be on Blue Note over a few others because of that, because they gave me a lot less money than the other labels were going to give me. But I just, Bruce Lundvall was a real record business guy. He wasn't a music industry guy. He's a record business guy. And Tom Everett, who was the VP, was great. Everyone was great there. So, it just made so much sense for me. And they really didn't care. They were just like, look, there's no one who's like doing this weird thing you're doing. And you guys get in a van and you tour the country like an old Territory band. What's not to like for us in terms of promotion? So yeah, just go do whatever the hell you want to do. It's fine. And and I understand that. It's why I appreciate you saying that. I understand other friends of mine, they have a different internal clock, and it's an authentic clock for them, but it's just different, and they feel like they need to for their sake and also for their fans' sake, it's important for them to kind of be very consistent from year to year with a very similar thing, and I always felt like I wasn't doing enough sideman work after I had my own band, because I was just on the road doing that, and I figured like, well, I need to learn, and if I'm not hiring people that are better than me at certain things, I'm not going to learn. So that that was a big part of it as well. And yeah, pretty much any band I had, that is, as soon as it reached its peak of what it was going to do, which is generally with any band is right before it starts to make money commercially, I would kill it off. I would kill it off, because I knew that we weren't going to play any better than that, and we had done what we were going to do, So yeah, and it's I'm just honestly glad that I can make a living, playing music, and I don't know how it's a fucking miracle, honestly.
No, I know. I mean, dude, I'm telling you, it's like one of the most inspiring. I cite you all the time to people in terms of if I ever have moments where, like last year when I released a record and was on the radio talking to a DJ about like in Baltimore about the music and all that, I cite you all the time about how I love the fact that you're just like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm gonna do this now, and then
Right.
now I'm done with this. Now I'm gonna do this now. And I think that's the way that we are mentally as human beings too. Like to get just stuck in one little cube and stay there your whole career is maddening. So like, because for you at least, I mean, is there, when you're writing different records and working on music and composing, is a lot of that influenced by music you're listening to at the time? Is it old riffs and old stuff that you're pulling from? Like if you're listening, I know you're an old blues, you're into old blues roots music, so it's like, is there stuff that's just like, oh, this record's gonna be kind of like this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I just think about the people that I'm playing with, and what makes sense for this group, kind of, but yeah, and I'm not like a writer guy. I'm not one of those people who gets up every day and writes, and I mean, I'm just it goes in cycles. Now I'm in this cycle of doing a lot of recording, and one of the primary people I'm working with is this guy Darren here in Greensboro, who's this great I like to think of him as like a hip-hop songwriter, but even that doesn't really do him justice, because his songs are so good, and so he's so prolific, and he can really write anything. He's like would have been a brill building guy 50 years ago, but so he'll send me a stem of him, with like a vocal and maybe some MIDI stuff that he's done, and a tempo, and I'll just add drums and bass and guitar or percussion or whatever seems right over that. So that's been like a super fun writing process thing for me to do. And sometimes he'll just send a vocal, because he'll be like, I put music, but I don't want you to hear that. because I don't want you to be affected by that. I want to see what you come up with without hearing the music. And that's been great. And I feel like I may have burned out on writing instrumental music kind of as a vehicle for my instrument. I feel like I may have burned out on that. I don't I think I did enough of it. I think there are enough of those records, and I need to concentrate on learning how to be a better musician, which means playing a lot of drums and percussion and even regular bass and guitar, and just recording and really doing a lot of research and making sure that this kind of time in the shed doesn't go to waste, and then maybe when eventually I emerge from it, I'll be able to have something that is meaningful to write, in an instrumental setting. But I think you just kind of got to be ready for whatever the universe presents to you.
Yeah. Especially with what's going on in the world today. But I mean,
oh yeah.
And all the stuff like with Lucy that you were doing, that you've done. And I mean, I love hearing you play with a vocalist, which
me too.
Brings me to a question, sir, about this record.
I know, my abs were a lot more chiseled back then.
You are cut, son. I wanted to ask you, so that album changed my life.
Oh wow. A lot of people your age say that, which is interesting to me.
Well, what's strange is I didn't find out about it until I was at Berklee. I mean, the main reason I went to Berklee, because I remember you and Adam were talking about music schools and should one go, should one not? And the whole reason I wanted to go to Berklee was because I grew up in a small music town, or a small town that was not music, known for its music.
Yeah.
And as a songwriter, I was like, what the hell can I do with my career? I have no clue what I can do as a songwriter. I have no exposure to any knowledge about this stuff, which is why I ended up going. But that one of my professors played that record for me after a class, because we were working on writing some tunes together. I had no clue you were on it until like we were listening to the whole album, and then he was like, "Do you know who plays on this record?" And at first of all, I didn't know D'Angelo played most of the drums on that album too. But how did that?
No, that was Questlove.
I thought D'Angelo played he played on a couple of tracks, right? Didn't he play on Untitled?
He may have, but I know Questlove did most of the drums on that record.
Yeah, I know he played on it a bunch. But when I was looking at the liner notes and I saw who played the drums, and I saw D'Angelo, I was like, what? Like, okay,
yeah.
And
he may have. I don't know. He didn't play drums on the stuff that I was a part of.
How did that come about? How did you get that gig? I was just curious.
Well, BET, back in the day, they had a jazz kind of thing. BET, Bet on Jazz, it was called, and they didn't have a lot of content. And my trio with Dave Ellis, and I think it was Scott Amendola at the time, we went to on one of our tours, we stopped in and we recorded, filmed 3 or 4 tunes. And back then they just ran it all the time because they didn't have a lot of content. So if you were up at night flipping through the cable, you would see us, and I guess he saw it and he liked it, and he made a mental note of it. And I kind of knew of him, but I didn't know a lot. He had that first record that came out. I didn't know a ton about him. But then I went to, he called me up and asked if I wanted to come play on the record they were making. And of course I said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for like maybe 2 days. And then I just went back on the road and went about my business, and then I think 4 years later, the record came out,
Man, that's crazy. How many of those?
Yeah, it was just another day for me. Not another day, but it was in the middle of a really busy touring and recording schedule. This was like 1997, maybe 96, something like that. And we were just so busy that it was just about getting back on the road, playing more and more, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So how many of those do you think you've done in your career so far? Just like random, like this artist calls you up. I mean, hundreds at this point?
I don't think so. Not that many. I mean, because it's a weird thing, you know. I'm just this weird guy that plays this weird instrument, and it's like you really have to want it. You know, it's a very specific thing. It takes up a lot of space. It's not just like calling up a guitar player who like has a signature or distinctive, unique vibe or anything like that. It's like really unique and really weird, and it's going to take up a lot of bandwidth. So for somebody to get in bed with that, it takes a real leap of faith, you know.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting to hear you say that because it's like I think I picture that differently for you, that it's like it's different. So it would be more people like, oh, I do want something more different, or I do want this
Yeah,
specific sound. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
interesting.
and it really is a very different aesthetic. I mean, I've recorded enough on just bass and just guitar to know, and now for the last year, a lot of drums and percussion, to kind of know how weird it is, my instrument, in terms of that procedure. As a live instrument, it's amazing because you can move the music into so many different positions. You know, you can do this, you can do that. But recording, you know, when people are going to go through stuff with a fine-tooth comb and you know they want a specific vibe, it's a different vibe than playing bass and playing guitar. It's just a different kind of thing. um but you know, and then maybe it's not always the appropriate thing either, you know. And plus it's just like, I mean, if someone sends me, I did a recording last week for someone and they paid me money. I just played jazz guitar on some thing for a TV thing, and it took 15 minutes to an hour to do it, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
my instrument is, you know, you're so invested in everything, and you know, so at least I'm trying to get to that point on my instrument where I just really don't give a shit, and then you can actually play good music again, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's go in that direction, because the thing that I really
It's
like.
also hard. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. It's also, as my friend Monty Croft says, it's like one of those the dive in the Olympics when they judge you on the level of difficulty. You know, it's just an incredibly high level of difficulty just to get like basic music out of it.
Mhm.
And you know, I think it's just my cross to bear or something like that. You know, I don't know.
I mean, it's such a trailblazing thing that you did, and now look at all these cats. Now you've got, you know, Mark Letary and you know, Sharky playing it, and like
Yeah,
you're like, damn it, like these young
and they sound
libertarians.
great. And they sound great. And I don't mind, man. I did a weird thing, and I stood on the shoulders, you know, of people like Tuck Andrews and Joe Pass, and I tried to figure out what they were doing, and it's only right. I mean, it took Tuck 20 years to learn that, and it took me a year to figure out what he did, because he did all the heavy lifting, and I'm happy to do the heavy lifting, and I hope that people who come and use whatever aspects of what I do in their style, they find some use for it, and they can find a use for their own voice somehow, you know.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I was at NAMM and I picked up one of those instruments and tried to play it, and I was like, nope, this is gonna take me. This would take me a long time to do this.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a really hard thing you know, just time. That's all. It's just time, you
Yeah.
know.
But what I think is the coolest thing about it, in my opinion, and this is my own opinion, but you groove like a mov on that thing.
Oh, thank you, man.
I think,
I
and it's
I
groove.
don't think I do, honestly. I think I can eventually really get there. I think there's some good stuff, but you know, from playing all the drums lately and just playing bass and just playing guitar, it's so much easier. I mean, I have it inside me. I have the groove, and I have a really good time feel, and the blues and all that stuff. It's just harder, much harder to get there on my instrument. Um, but then a lot of that is also the function of the player maybe trying to do too many things or whatever it is. But I appreciate it. But I'm working on learning how to groove a lot better, you know, on it. You know,
Well,
so hopefully it'll get somewhere good, you
I
know.
don't know how that's going to be possible, Charlie. It's already it's already there, man.
As Buddy Rich said, it's very fucking possible.
So the groove stuff though, like let's talk about, because I took a lesson with you back in like 2011, and it was remote like this,
Yeah.
and this will stick with me forever. Something you said to me. You said to me, you don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. You want to be an inch
Right.
wide and a mile deep. And I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit. And I was just like, now it
Yeah.
makes sense, kind of thing. So like for you talking about your instrument and then translating that into playing the kit, because I even remember in that lesson, man, you were like, do you have a drum kit? And I was like, I do. And you're just like, you should play that every day.
Yeah.
So for you, I know you're really getting excited about the drums right now. I wanted to ask you about this, like what you're doing, because I see you're playing with that organ trio like on Instagram and you're doing a bunch of stuff. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, man, I just love it. I mean, it's what I started out playing, and when I was a kid, and you know, I've been lucky through the years. I've gotten to play with really some of the great drummers in the world, you know, and learned a lot sitting right next to them for, you know, 30 years or so. And um, you know, but since COVID, I was just like, okay, I'm really going to work on this. I'm really going to take this to the next level. Not chops wise, but yes, you know, I'll get up and I'll do rudiments and stuff like that to really get my hands together enough that I can realize the grooves that I'm trying to play, because that's ultimately all I want to do, is just play a really nice groove and make people happy, you know. And it's these guys, the Frybush brothers, who are local guys but who lived in New Orleans. Sam and Eli. Eli plays saxophone and Sam plays B3, and I've always wanted to play in an organ group too, you know. And Sam fucking can play all of that shit, like the pedals, like for real stuff. So, you know, man, it's just been and this guitar player Jimmy Washington, who I've kind of helped his band out, produce their thing. And, you know, we've been doing gigs down here. I mean, they're like, you know, patio gigs where there's 40 people spread out, but it's really the most fun I have had in years, you know. And I mean, it's just like, I love it so much. And the more I do it, the better I will get on my instrument, because I'm rearranging all of my priorities, you know. Um, and it's just great. You know, I love it.
What do you feel like is the sauce or like the ingredients that make a drummer's feel good? Like what are you looking for if you're hiring a drummer? Like what is it about their feel that you're like you could get sucked into? Like you're saying you play with all these great drummers. Have you ever gotten lost in a moment on stage where they're just killing it and you're just like, "Oh my god, man." Like,
Of course, all
yeah.
the time. All
Yeah.
the time. And every drummer is different, and every drummer has their own feel. And even if you're gonna play a shuffle with 4 or 5 great shuffle drummers, it's gonna feel different. Each one will feel a little different, and you just have to respect that. You know, if you don't like their feel for some reason, you probably shouldn't play with them. Um, no, honestly, and you may be wrong too. You might be the one who's wrong. And to me, yeah, that whole feel thing, it's really everything. I mean, when I was playing with Adam Cruz, who really, you know, people go, "Oh, Adam Cruz, he's a Latin guy. He plays Latin music." It's just ridiculous to say that about him. That's how he grew up, but he plays everything. I mean, he's one of the baddest jazz, you know, straight ahead drummers on the planet. You know what I mean? It's just you're not, but you know, because his dad played with Mongo and Eddie Palmieri and all that, and Adam came up in that world. He totally just, to him, that music is to him like what the blues is to me. It's just like a thing you just kind of grew up with, and you know. So when I was playing with him, I was like, man. He goes, yeah, your feel is not fantastic for this, but it's okay. Get a conga, check these records out, do this stuff, figure it out. And I had to get that experience of what it's like to be the one who doesn't have a good feel. You know what I mean? But eventually you play with all these great drummers with their different feels, and you absorb it, and you're able to communicate with many musicians because of that feel.
Mhm.
And whatever you have to understand you're going to have your own feel as well, which can always be improved on and can always be deepened.
Yeah. What are the records that you're listening to kind of give you more of that drum inspiration right now? Is there anything that's topical that you have really been digging into? I'm curious what you're listening to right now and how that's helping your musicality.
For me, it's a lot of old standbys. Any of the Stack stuff with Al Jackson Jr., the Howard. There you go, boom. The stuff with Howard Grimes, and then all the old chess stuff with Fred Below playing those great shuffles. Any New Orleans music. Any of that stuff is, I mean, I talk about the drums. That is where it all comes from. So everything from Vernel Fournier to Idris Muhammad to, James Black to Herman Ernest, Johnny Vodakovich, and even friends of mine like Terrence Higgins and Stanton and Doug Belote, who I was lucky enough to play with for the last year before COVID shut down our reality. And then, of course, the stuff I grew up listening to, which is all the, James Gadsden, and then a lot of that late '70s R&B stuff as well, which is just to me some of the best drumming. And so yeah, I'm just trying to, and of course the James Brown stuff, just trying to learn, and just basic, nothing fancy, just trying to get enough chops together that I can execute those feels and not get in anybody's way. You know what I mean? That's the whole goal, at least, and I'm just fucking grateful I have time to work on that, and I live in an inexpensive enough area that I know I got my mortgage for the next 3 months. You know what I mean?
I think that I can't remember when it was, but how long have you been in North Carolina now?
Couple years.
Okay. Because there was some gig you went live on Instagram with Jeff Clapp one time, and that was the first time I saw you play with Jeff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And it was in some small cafe looking kind of joint. It's just the two of you, and I was like, "Who is this drummer?"
Oh yeah, nuts, man.
Talk about a dude with feel, man. That guy.
Yeah.
I mean, are you picking up stuff from him, and like, are you working?
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me about what you're doing with him, because I'm curious as a half-ass drummer, like what you're doing.
Well, unfortunately, he moved to Texas.
I didn't know that.
Work. I think he had to get a job and move, and it's a bummer he's not here to play with all the time. But he's from here, from Winston originally, but he lived in New Orleans for 20 years. He was Ellis Marsalis's drummer, among others, and he just has that shit down. That feel it's just disgusting. And his real calling card in many ways is his brush playing. So that's kind of awesome. Actually, there's a record we made last year. A friend of ours from Ottawa, Peter Cancora, a great tenor sax player, he came down here, and we recorded his record, he and Jeff and I, in the place On the One that we used to have here. That's an amazing room. It was an old paper towel factory, and we did a great record because there was no miking of the horn, so he was just playing totally acoustically, and we played, hopefully most of the time you turn down enough and play with brushes, we played to his volume level. And I think he told me he's releasing the record really soon. So
that's gonna be great. I was wondering if there was any collaboration guys coming out.
That's awesome. It should be coming out soon. Yeah. I just released a record myself. Well, I say released. It's not up on streaming services. I'm trying to sell it through my own kind of, not website, but just like on the DMs on social media, selling the Wave downloads. And it's a record I made it's all Charlie Patton songs, and I call it Patton in Percussion, like a play on words on that Puente in Percussion record. So I played like 9 Charlie Patton songs, and I played, I would do the percussion first, like whether it was congas and cajon, shakers, bell, pandero, depending upon what the groove was. I just would lay down the form of the song with the percussion to a click, and then I put my hybrid guitar over the top of that. And it's pretty damn cool, man. So if people want it, they can hit me up.
Yeah, so through any streaming or through any social media platform, hit you up.
Yeah, just DM me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll give you the rest of the instructions. But I'm going to be putting it up on probably the streaming services within a month or two. I don't know, whenever it ends up happening. Yeah,
can't wait to hear that, man. That's awesome. Is there any well, first of all, how's your tambourine playing coming along these days? I mean, you were crushing that tambo, man, for a while.
Yeah. No, I haven't really played it that much. It's a it's a really tough instrument, and it's really technical and has a real specific technique. And sorry, I've just been getting so into the drums and the other stuff that I just really haven't had time to mess with it, you know?
Yeah. It's so inspiring to see. I mean, it's, for me as a musician and having followed you since the 90s and stuff, like I was saying, just through all the different iterations of the music that you've created and you've been involved with, and then to like come to this and see you playing a gig on drums, I'm like, damn it, there he goes again, man. It's like just pushing the envelope. It's like, it's so great. It's just really inspiring. I think a lot of musicians that are following what you've done in your career would say the same exact thing, man. It's just like, you've got to reinvent yourself in the business of this industry is a shit, storm. So it's like, you have to wear all these different hats, and you've got to be able to do all these different things and diversify your portfolio, as it were.
It's true. And it's never really ever been great for musicians. It's not, we're really the last consideration. Now we're even further, we're content providers now,
Oh man, I know.
I mean, for me, it's not terrible. I'm 53. I've been doing it a really long time. I had a good career, and I love playing every day. And I can hopefully be able, when this is over, maybe there's no road anymore. Maybe I just do local gigs, and that's okay for me. But the people I really feel for are the people in their 20s and maybe early 30s who are really just starting to get a career off the ground, and everything just came to a screeching halt for them. That's much more of an existential kind of experience for them, I think.
Yeah. Are you an optimist in this situation? Do you feel like things will get back? We will get back into a club. We will get back into, venues.
I think eventually, yeah. But I think everything will be really changed. I mean, that's what any kind of paradigm shifting, global kind of trauma or cataclysm does. There's a before and after, and who knows what the after will bring, and who knows what will be valuable to people, so you never really know. I mean, it certainly is not going to be how it once was. And I mean, then that also comes back to, what about the country itself? It's very fractured right now as well, and I don't think we're going to culturally come back from that. I think there's just too much mistrust, and I don't think we're going to ultimately come together for a while. It's going to be a while. So but I'm hoping that there's always, musicians are always there. We're always doing it. We're always pushing the van uphill, even though, there's very little recompense in it, but we're doing it because it's a calling. And there's some, this is book called Noise by this guy, Jacques Attali. And his whole premise is like, musicians have been presaging social movements by anywhere from 10 to 50, 100 years. And if you follow what musicians were doing, well, you can see what, if you know how to look for it, you can see what the next thing is going to be,
That's really interesting.
But who are the musicians now? Who is, we know we love to make these comparisons. Oh, he's the Jimi Hendrix of the blah, 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 blah. There's really just one Jimi Hendrix, and he shifted a paradigm in his time. So who's that now? Who are the people that are doing? It certainly isn't me. Who are those people, and what are they doing? That's a really good question.
Yeah, but I would, I would argue that, like I said, you pioneered and trailblazed pretty hard with this instrument.
I did at one point, but that was then. I still keep at it because I love doing it. But
Yeah,
who's the next kind of movement? What does it mean? Everything is just so up in the air.
yeah,
Socio-politically, and culture is just such a massively important aspect of that.
I
And
know.
then you also take where the business has gone and where it was before the COVID, and it really became um, it became such a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm getting old and forgetting words. Uh, it became such an when you have an exchange of money,
Right.
what's the
Like
what's
currency.
the adjective? No, but
No,
also
no.
the relationship. It was an entirely relationship of monetary.
I'm losing it
Yeah,
too. My brain is gone.
so when you have that kind of a thing going on, you really start to lose a lot of what's important about it. You know.
Yeah. I think the other cool thing that I've noticed that you're doing and I really appreciate is just like the support of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that is going on because it's and I love the one day I saw something. If you don't agree with me, then fucking sign off, cancel because I
You
don't
can
care.
leave. I don't need
Yeah.
to. I'm not interested. I'm not
Dude.
interested. And also, like, I encourage people, you know, white musicians who have managed to get pretty far in this industry, and not just musicians, but also the business people and producers and engineers. I encourage them to go beyond putting up platitudes on social media and all this, and and find someone in your area that is really fucking brilliant, and do for them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Do for them. Don't be the boss and be the patronizing kind of big white savior figure, but be the staircase they need to get to their next point,
Mhm.
because this country has such a fucking history of with redlining, with every possible thing in every possible era of stopping uh, black people, especially, and of course people of color, from getting anywhere,
Mhm.
developing any type of equity in anything, So I feel like it's important that you know we check ourselves and find someone, and it doesn't have to be a grant, but find someone and really do the right thing, and be part of the solution. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I know.
Um,
It's upside down, man. It's so as a father of a 9-year-old girl, we're doing our best to, educate her on all this and make her aware. And now she's really young, so the psyche that she, has is not capable of understanding why there's hatred, between this
right.
person and this person, and like it does, and we're like, yeah, it makes zero sense, and like we need
Yeah.
to help these people, and like we were talking about this. My wife and I talk about it basically every night, yeah, because it's upsetting. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
as a white dude, I'm like, I have to stand up for this too, and like be like, this is not right. Like I get it. Like we need to
Yeah.
change this now. But like think about being like the difference between me and a black man driving a car and getting pulled over. I have no concerns about anything happening. That's wrong.
Mm,
That's so
yeah.
wrong. Like that I have the ability to be like carefree about being pulled over, but this other man doesn't.
Yeah.
And I just
I
really
mean,
wanted to tell you that I appreciate that you've been
no,
doing
I mean that you gotta, it's not like I don't give a fuck. That's just who I am. I mean, damn
it.
it, you know. I mean, I
Yeah.
was lucky. I grew up in Berkeley, California, at a time when we took it for granted. You had all of these, I guess what would later be called multiculturalism. I mean, of course, Berkeley in the 70s wasn't without its problems, but my high school had the first like African American studies department in the country before any college did.
That's awesome.
And the man who led that, Richard Navies, who unfortunately passed from leukemia, his daughter is a friend of mine, and she's a big mucky muck in the African American History Museum in the Smithsonian in D.C. And we were exposed to all of this all of the time, and made to feel welcome and made to feel part of the process. And of course, you're that age, and I remember being a young kid, 15 or 16, and being in a band with older black men getting pulled over by the police and seeing firsthand just the absolute ugliness. So, I mean, that all of those things come. I mean, the thing is, I think with your daughter and my kids, it's a different world for them, because I think they're finally coming to the point where this whole low resolution grand narrative that's baked into the cake of American history there's a big hole in it. And so much of the grievance from, I feel, most white people, is because that hole is being uncovered and looked at a lot.
Right.
And there's a lot of ugly stuff in there. And if South Africa can do they can do a truth and reconciliation committee, we sure as hell can here as well. And it's high time we did it. I mean, and that's just my own 2 cents. And I'm sure I will lose another 3,000 followers, but I don't really care. I'm not doing it for the followers. It's just like, what are you going to do? You're going to just come, and if you come to my house and find a way to make me clap on 1 and 3, you have succeeded. Other than that, I don't give a goddamn.
Oh my God, that analogy was right on. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you have such a great platform for being vocal about that stuff. And in general, like I love following all these musicians now. I love and hate social media. I love social media because it brought me and you together. It brought me and Joey together when I started studying with Joey and got to be friends with Joey and all that stuff. But, ultimately getting a glimpse of that plus the musical stuff, man, that it's like an everyday part of like your life. I think it's great that you're open enough to share your thoughts and also the next clip, next Instagram stories, you crushing it with the drummer. So it's just like, yeah, man, this is great. Like, everything.
Yeah, it's okay. And I mean, we just watched that documentary, The Social Dilemma. Have you seen it?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a real life changer right there, man.
Ooh, oh, man.
I just realized, like, okay, wait a minute. I'm on this way too much. Why am I here? What am I doing? What am I clicking on? Why did I click on that? I don't need a vacuum cleaner. Like, what the hell is going on here? How is it? They are the pimp, and and they're using me.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I am total just the product. And I realized, like, okay, wait a minute. It's like they said, yeah, social media is a tool, but most tools, like a hammer, once you're done using a hammer, it's done. It doesn't do anything else. Social media is just pimping you out every second of every day. So you got to find a way to switch that paradigm around. You know what I mean? So you use it as a tool. And I ultimately think that I do use it as a tool, but it definitely doesn't come without its issues.
Oh my God, it's so scary. It's so
Yeah.
scary. Well, I mean, I had to like 3/4 of the way through. I'm like, this isn't helping me.
I know.
I'm aware of this problem, and I'm aware that I keep like looking at my phone and picking it up every 5 minutes, and I'm like, what am I doing? Stop it! Stop
Why?
it. Like,
Why? It's like the new cigarettes, only it gives cancer to everything.
Oh,
But the
scary.
thing, remember that chilling part in the thing where every one of those guys says, they ask, well, would you let your children use it? Oh, no, my children don't get to use social media. They don't have phones. No. It's like, oh, okay, I see. Like, so, you're making the meth. You're just not doing the meth,
If anyone here has not watched that, I know we're not selling it in terms of like it's this wonderful thing, but it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, it's a necessity to watch, and it applies to every single one of us too.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
Totally. So there's
Great.
some people in here that were asking some stuff. So Daniel Bennett Group said, "Funny you should mention the Cambridge show.
Oh,
I produced that concert series."
you did. Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Yeah.
That's
So
cool. That's awesome.
I'll never forget that. I think the other times I saw you might have been, I can't remember what album era it was, but do you remember the 8x10 Club in Baltimore?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So that must have been late 90s, maybe
Yeah.
at that point.
I
I
think
can't
I
remember
played
who.
it when it had another name even earlier than that. It's called like the Bayou or something like that.
Oh, weird. I didn't know that. I mean, I wasn't
Yeah.
old enough to be running around down there at that time.
Yeah. Even this is like 1995 or something like that, you know.
Oh man, I mean, the whole reason I'm a musician is probably because of Pearl Jam. Like when I first heard
Uh-huh.
like the Seattle scene, because I mean, I was whatever. I was 11 years old when that record came out, and it just pushed me. But like, it's so funny. There was a point in the mid 90s because I have older siblings who were into other, more sophisticated music that just like flipped that switch. I don't know if you, because I know you were exposed to a lot of great, like you're talking about your mom's records and stuff that you guys listened to. Like I didn't have that. I had to like seek it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it was funny to like in Baltimore, it's a small, I mean, you've been through here. It's like there's not a ton of clubs and stuff
Yeah.
happening here. So like anytime someone like you or whoever comes through, it's like a big deal for us musicians,
Right.
to
Right.
go see players. Like cuz it's like, you probably had that experience with going to see, I mean, who's an example of someone you saw that you were like, I'm going to see a player tonight. This is going to be,
Yeah.
life-changing.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I got to close this door for my
That's all
son. Before my son suffocates me with
good.
carbon monoxide here. Um, he he has a car that like it costs more to keep it not running than it would to just drive it off a cliff, I think. But he works on it every day. He's got but I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area and in Berkeley at the time, just Berkeley, not even Oakland. There were like 10 nightclubs in Berkeley, so we were around music all the time, and we were in the guitar stores, Subway guitars, or secondhand guitars, and we knew that if Ry Cooder or Gatemouth Brown or Taj Mahal, who actually I grew up with one of his daughters, Aya, um, or David Lindley, or Albert King was playing the night before, we knew that there was a chance they would show up at the guitar store. And you just wait at the guitar store, and then there was music happening all the time. On the campus, on the UC campus, they had concerts every week. Like Fela played on the campus, the Talking Heads played there, Trouble Funk played there. I mean, it was like an endless music. And then the music was in the high school. The Berkeley High band was like all these crazy famous players who later on went on to all kinds of glory, and there was that group, the Digital Underground. Too Short used to come sell his tapes on the campus. There was a big the place called Ashkenaz, which always had really cool folk music. You could go there one night and see like a great reggae band from Jamaica. The next night it would be like Queen Ida, or Terrence Simeon, or you'd see just great stuff there all the time. And so being surrounded with that, it was always good music all the time. But I think it's also I think if you were in Baltimore at that time, it probably would have been similar, because I think it's also a function of the era as well. I'm just old enough that I was still in that holdover from kind of the 60s, in terms of how everyone wanted to go out to see live music, and it was a really vital part of the community,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and and I'm really glad I got to grow up in a place like that, because we were surrounded by culture culture all the time, and I can't think of anything better than that,
I think you exude it, man. You can tell. Like it's
Oh,
just like
thanks, man.
it's part of you, dude. It just seems like it's part of you. So that's
But
awesome.
I'm nothing special, man. honestly, all the people I came up with are, I mean, they're disgusting musicians, and it was just all being a product of a culture, you know.
Yeah.
Really, I just whatever I did, I just had some shit that happened to be interesting to people at the time, and I just kind of wrote it, you know. Some other people that I grew up with were not as lucky, but probably are better musicians than I am, honestly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's I would love to go back and like trace some lineage from, because like I love Wayne Krantz. He's another one of my favorite players just because he's
Yeah,
so
he's
different.
awesome. Very,
Um,
very cool.
just to see like where like what the Pacific Northwest was going on like when he was young kind of thing, and to see like because
Is that where he's from?
yeah, yeah. So I don't know when he moved to the East Coast. I mean, I know he went to Berkeley for a hot minute.
Mhm.
So I know he was there, and then he went straight to New York at that
Yeah,
point, I think. So,
yeah.
but
I can't speak to the Pacific Northwest, but I mean, I know the Bay Area very well. You know,
yeah,
that experience because I lived it, but I also know the stories of the generation above me as well. You know.
yeah, that's so great, man. That's so cool. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. I do this thing that's like a 10-question lightning
Okay.
round, and so we're gonna get.
Lightning round. I love it. Watch out, man.
And we got my my metronome as my clock. Gotta
Okay.
have your metronome. All
That's
right.
to put the fear of God into me.
Oh, 100%, 100%. First question's always the same: Lennon or McCartney?
I'm a both guy. Sorry to say.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right. French fries or onion rings?
French fries.
Brass or woodwinds?
Brass.
Surfboard or boogie board?
Oh, I don't know anything about any of that shit. I mean, maybe a surfboard because I can use it for kindling. I don't know.
All right, here's one. Three's Company or Love Boat?
Oh God, neither. Please. I'm rough enough to live through that the first time.
I know, right? All right, Dr. John or John Cleary?
Oh, but I love both of them, and yeah, they're both great. I'm sorry.
You can't choose.
Fantastic.
You choose death.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, here's a pedal one because I know that you've used both. I think Hughes and Kettner Roto or the Strymon Lex.
I'd say the Strymon Lex just because it's so small and easy to get around with, you know.
All right, cool.
But
Giants.
for a time, the Rotosphere could not be beaten.
Yeah, I know. I mean, how many years did you use that? Long time, right?
Yeah, for a while.
Long time. All right, Giants or Athletics?
Oh, that's such a funny question. I grew up an A's fan. I lived in the East Bay. It cost nothing to go to the Oakland Coliseum and see baseball games. Huge A's fan, and then I kind of got out of it. And then I was visiting a friend in San Francisco about 10 years ago, and he took me to see the Giants. And I kind of fell in love with baseball all over again because of that team they had and because of Bruce Bochy. So I'm kind of a Giants fan now. What can I say? You know?
I grew up with the Bash Brothers, man, like watching Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco.
Oh, yeah.
That was my life as a kid, man. All right.
I used to see those games all the time. Dude, the bleachers were $3 or $4, you know.
Really? Even when those guys were on the team?
Oh yeah, dude. I was going to A's games in like 77, 78, kind of when they were terrible. So when that thing came around, it was unbelievable.
Woo!
You know.
What a run, man. All right. Same song title, different artists. Jump, Van Halen, or Jump, Pointer Sisters?
Pointer Sisters.
Yeah. All right. And here's the last one. Sometimes this is the hardest one. Sometimes this is the easiest one. If you had to choose, guitar or drums?
Drums.
Oh, so easy.
Oh, easy. I wouldn't give it a second thought, honestly.
You made it through any specific reason? It's just because you love getting behind the kit?
It's just more fun than anything, really.
Yeah.
At least for me, you know. I've just played so much goddamn guitar, and I love it, and it's my but it informs everything I do, and I come from that whole thing. But nothing is as fun as drums, man. And I'm not the kind of guitar player that wants to play a lot of stuff and kind of plays a lot of licks and it tries to play solos and things. So the function of what I do is more like the drums anyway. So to actually get to play the drums is kind of like, that's the most fun. Really.
Nice. What kick drum size are you usually like enamored with? Like when you're bringing
20,
a kit out? Okay.
just a 20, because it's got, you can get a thump out of it, and it's not too big.
Are you playing big like Steve Jordan cymbals? Like what are you doing for your cymbals?
I just have, people are nice to me, so I've got I got a 22-inch ride, Istanbul ride with a lot of rivets in it, and just some hi-hats that clap left, like 15-inch old Zildjians that sound really good. But sometimes I don't even bring the hi-hat. Sometimes if it's the organ group, I'll just play with just the ride cymbal, because it mostly just end up going to just the ride cymbal. But yeah, whatever. And I'm not that great either, so it doesn't even matter. probably play a garbage can lid and it wouldn't sound much better.
Oh man. So have you ever tried to mess with like oversized hats at all, just to like experiment, like in recording or whatever?
Yeah, I've gotten behind people's kits with them. I don't know. Maybe I'm not ready for that yet. I don't know, And also the stuff I've been working on with Darren, he's like, doesn't want to ever hear hi-hats. He's like, always use something else for the hi-hat. Don't use a hi-hat. Use something else, So I'll use a shaker in the right hand, and then, bass drum, snare drum, or a crash, little crash thing, or the side of the bass drum, or something, or just a ride cymbal, because he just doesn't want to have any hi-hat on any of the recordings, And I love him for that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, I gotta see. So, is this the music that you've been posting like from the studio when you're just sitting there? It sounds amazing.
It's really great. I'll send you the SoundCloud. We're starting to get some action. We're trying to get some, because he's young, so for him it's about releasing singles. And I'm just like, dude, whatever. I'm just the old guy trying to get you to the next step the logical next step in your career. So you let me know what I can do, and if I'm not, but I don't know how the hell to promote anything today in this day and age. I'm still just like, yeah, you put out an album, you go on the road, and then you tour, and then you stop. And then you make another record and you put that out, and then you tour. It doesn't work that way. Even before COVID, it didn't even really work that way anymore. So, anyhow, yeah, exactly. But anyhow, his music is really cool, man. And it's just, we'll do a tune a day, or a lot of the times. So we're hoping to get it out. BMG expressed some interest in maybe getting sync rights for some of the stuff, which is helpful too. So but it's just really great music. I mean, the thing about it is, it's really interesting, people's reactions, because it's very hard to get people on board with something new, and until they get on board. And then when they got on board, everyone else smells it and they're like, oh, this is the new thing, let me check it out. But his music, it's very cool, and it's very, I mean, they have everything on this record, from old school hip hop to almost like a Beatles song to kind of like a Jimmy Buffett style tune. I mean, it's like he can write anything, you know what I mean, and make it really weird and interesting,
And he's a singer too, because I think there was a great voice too. Wonderful.
Yeah, he's got a great voice. Yeah, and a great producer as well, and it's, I just think it's important to recognize that kind of talent, and give it its due, and try to be part of the solution. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
So
yeah. Well, we'll end on that. Charlie, thank you so much, buddy, for hanging out, man. I really appreciate it. You guys should go hit Charlie up about his new record. Buy that thing from him. And just keep supporting all artists right now in this time. It's crazy.
Please do what you can. And if you can't afford it and you need some music, let me know.
Right on. Thanks, guys, so much.